As I've gotten older, one of the things that has been a unforeseen, life-changing experience has been having an accountability group or a support group around me. Now, I talk to people a lot who are extremely hesitant to do any kind of group work or 12-step work or anything where you have to talk and be intimate or share what's going on in your life. When you ask an addict, or if you ask a betrayed spouse to think about a group, it is terrifying because it means you're going to have to share who you are. And for the addict, it's really scary because it's actually what you need, which is being vulnerable and being intimate and being honest and being out and up front in a community of people that aren't going to judge you. And I'll talk about that in a minute. It has become vital for me that I have authentic support in my life. Now, when I do this, I have to really caution people because it sounds great when it's done right, but I'll tell you, early on, Samantha went to a support group. It wasn't an affair recovery group or anything like that, and she was hoping for women that were going to stand with her and support her and that she could be vulnerable with. Well, she went, and everybody kind of shared a few minutes of their story, and then she shared her story. And she said she looked around at these other 8 women, and they all were staring at her with their mouths wide open, going, "Oh my gosh." She never went back. I also went to a support group, and I had a few moments to kind of share, in 2 minutes or less, share your story. And I did. The exact same thing happened to me. All these guys looked around and they were like, "I feel so much better about my situation now after hearing yours." Now, I will tell you, there should be that kind of variable where you go to group work and you feel like, wow, I'm not the worst, but I'm not the best situation. So it's normal to feel that way. But unless you're going to a situation, or group rather, where it is filled with people who are sharing betrayal or sharing addiction or unfaithfulness or trying to get help from people who are in the same level of crisis, if they're not at the same level of crisis or the same level of carnage, if you will, it's going to be very uncomfortable. I have a saying personally, which is, the right group will save your life. The wrong group will ruin your life. So you have to be careful and find the right group, or else it's going to make things actually worse. So allow me to make some observations today on why finding a small group is so pivotal and what it'll do for you. Number one is it's incredibly life-giving when you can be around people who are sharing the same kind of carnage and who can affirm you that you're not crazy, that you're not the worst, that you are not some bastard of a person who has completely ruined their life and that there's no hope for you. When you're talking to someone who's been through like-minded carnage, if you will, if you're talking to someone who has also suffered at the level or even worse, and maybe not as bad as you, but they've suffered in a close proximity of what you're feeling, man, it's life-giving because you're talking to them and sharing, and they're sharing, and you're like, wow, I feel that too, and yeah, man, I get that, and man, that's how I feel. It's life-giving because you realize you're not just out there on an island by yourself suffering, and that you're not just this disowned kind of lost person who can't relate to anybody. Number two is it recharges you. Man, in the group of friends that I now have, who have all suffered moral failure at some level, when I'm talking to them, when I'm being vulnerable with even just one of them, it's recharging to me as a man. It encourages me to know, man, we're all struggling with something. If I spend too much time on social media or what have you, I can get this idea that, man, I'm just a failure and that I'm not doing anything, and all these people are doing all these wonderful things, but look at me, just a colossal disappointment. And if I really want to feel bad, I can look at some of the men that I used to run with and see all the things that they're doing, and I can get sucked into the lie that I'm just a failure and that my life is never going to be redeemed. And then I talk to these few friends that I have, it's about 3 of them, and I hear their struggles and I hear their perspective, and they center me as I center them. And they continue to remind me and say, dude, hold on, what are you thinking? No, that's a lie, that's a lie, that's a lie. Or it's recharging because they say, now listen, you know that's not true. Or you're starting to believe something that's just not right. Man, that brings life to me. It's saving me from myself. Which leads me to number 3, which is the right group. Again, it's got to be same sex. It's got to be safe. The right group, or the right mentor, if you will, exposes and diffuses the darkness. When I start to believe lies, or when I start to maybe slip, or when I start to get too prideful or insecure, or if I'm struggling with something and they pick up on it, they can call me on it and say, hey, that doesn't sound like the Samuel I know, or hey, careful now, or they'll just say, dude, save it, settle down, or they may get very vulnerable with me and say, man, you know, I'm really struggling with this, or hey, I've been praying about this, and I continually hear you say these things, and I'm just coming to you, man. I don't know, that doesn't sound like you. It exposes and diffuses the lies that I may be giving myself over to and not even realizing it. You've got to find the right group. It's got to be safe, it's got to be same sex, it's got to be life-giving. On the site, there's hope for healing for the unfaithful spouse. There's harboring hope for the betrayed spouse. Take my word for it. You've got to have that kind of support group. You say, Samuel, I don't have a lot of money. It's expensive. You can file for a scholarship on the website. But I'm telling you, go to SAA. Go to a group that is safe, that you're not going to be the worst situation, that you're able to be vulnerable with. Not some group of 30 or 40 people. No, you need a small group around you that can affirm you, that can support you, that's a safe place for recovery. Finally, oftentimes the very thing that we need is the very thing that we are afraid of. And I will tell you, if you're afraid to be vulnerable, especially if you're an unfaithful, that may be one of the major keys to your healing and relapse prevention, is finding someone to be safe and vulnerable with, that you can let your guard down and get the darkness out of you.